Folks, it is Wednesday, September 29th, 2021. We're at the end of September already. There's my alarm. It's time to start the program. Oh, wow, the end of September. Um, all the things that I thought were going to happen and that needed to happen because they were predicted, and I was nervous about traveling and being stuck somewhere in the middle of all the things that they're predicting. And here I sit. But I just could not consider going to visit family in either direction, east or west, unless I had got my life a little more settled. So I'm working on that. Mary Greeley, I have some things personal and news and some teaching time and so on. So Mary Greeley was on quite a tirade today, talking about La Palma and the fact that the lava hit the ocean in the middle of the night. It hit the ocean. The reason that's bad is because the combination of chemicals in the lava with the chemicals in the salt water creates a sulfuric gas that then goes into the air, which is very toxic to breathe, and it becomes acid rain, sulfuric acid rain, if it comes down. So Mary Greeley was, thanks, Lucy. Mary Greeley was talking about Mount St. Helen and the fact that the area around it is just now coming back. But because of what's going on with La Palma, the kind of lava, the content of the lava, she said Mount St. Helen was more ashen, and this is more dangerous and could end up just creating a dead zone for 1,000 years. She claimed with La Palma, and the it's not just the toxic gas, but there's also glass in the dust. So that's what's so dangerous about the ash that falls, is because the heat has created glass dust particles. I didn't tell you guys, a few days ago I got a call from Greg. He is resting at home. Thank God. He's got another week off. He's had a week off. He has another week to go before he has to head back to work. He went out jogging at 5 o'clock in the morning a couple days at the beginning of the week, and he saw two moons, what he thought was two moons in the sky, two full moons. Well, this is not full moon time, so they weren't moons. So what was it? And I heard somebody else mention it, and he has gone out and seen it twice in a row. Called me to tell me, is he seeing Planet X, the one that has the elliptical orbit around our sun that takes 3,600 years for this orbit to complete? They say this perhaps is what caused the pole shift that would have changed the melting of the polar areas and caused the worldwide flood in Noah's day, is something that I heard 6 years ago mentioned. Heard it multiple times. The other question is the uh, all right, what's the word when oh man, I can't believe I have this loss of words. When something falls and it goes to the ground because of the magnetic pull, what is that called? Anyhow, is that kind of magnetic pull going that is causing the lava, the molten lava, with the iron ore to then, with the magnetic changes, is the lava being pulled up from the center of the earth, and they were called. Do we have a second moon? Okay, thanks, Katie. Um, Anyhow, is that causing the volcanoes? I also was wondering today if it is having an effect on our sun, so that we're getting these flares and more windstorms and geomagnetic radiation and the solar flares and possible CME heading to us on Friday. I don't know. Just observing things. So Morgan had asked us, Morgan in our chat had asked us to pray for her family. There were issues going on with the death of her uncle. And boy, I tell you, I've been praying for her ever since she told us. I've been praying for her multiple times a day. And I got to thinking about the times in our life when we experience extreme betrayal. And of course, the closer somebody is to you, the more painful betrayal can be. And when we are excluded from something that's happening with family we think we should be part of, I texted her and I talked about how we're to have the mind of Christ. Second Corinthians 10:5 says we're to put on the mind of Christ. And Christ died to forgive while we were still in our sin. Christ died for us. It just, Lucy, please contact me. My email is maryellen, the numeral 4, Larry at yahoo.com, and let's talk about that. I can't talk about it here. They'll take the channel down. It's Mary Ellen. You see that on the screen. The numeral 4, the numeral, where do I get this here? The numeral 4. And then it's Mary Ellen 4 Larry at yahoo.com. So talking about bitterness and putting on the mind of Christ and the fact that while we were still sinners, he died for us. And we're supposed to be like him. It says, be perfect just as the way your Father in heaven is perfect. Well, perfect, does that mean we're not ever going to be sinless? Only Jesus was. But does that mean that part of our maturity, well, there are things that, when we become adults, we put away childish things. One of the things that's so hard to learn is forgiveness, not holding resentment, letting things go, and in everything, give thanks. That is so tough to do there are times when it's really, really hard. And I'm thinking about what's happening in my life right now. I found my pots and pans after the program yesterday. Yay! Now I don't have them all in the cupboard. Some of them are in the cabinet. I still need to I've cut contact paper. I'm not taking the sticky back off, but at least it gives me something to set things on, just to give a clean surface to put things on. And so I've cut it, but I haven't spread it out yet. But that was an answer to prayer, because it's like, where have my pans gone? I have no idea. Anyhow, I found them yesterday, so I'm very grateful for that. And the other day I was doing something and 3 different things happened. It's so easy to give God thanks when something like this happens, but when you're going through a really, really hard time. I didn't know how to do this when I was raising my family. I didn't understand in everything give thanks. I had forgotten that it's not just some nice little thing to do, it's a command. And we are to forgive. That's a command. And it's so hard to let things go and not harbor resentment. And yet, if we are harboring resentment, we are disobeying God. And God said in Deuteronomy 29, is it 29 or 30, that I set before you, verse 19, I know that I think it's Deuteronomy 30:19. I set before you life and death, blessing and cursing, therefore choose life. Well, life we know is something that continues into eternity. But if we do something that's going to give the devil a foothold, then we are going to have more demonic attack coming at us, because we have shown the demons that we were willing to succumb to doing something wrong. And if we are able to give thanks in everything and forgive something hurtful, not only are the angels rejoicing over that, but you are creating rewards in heaven for being obedient. but your life is going to change. I know for me, when I got to a point in my older adulthood, took me so long to learn this. But when I started giving thanks and realized that was the key to contentment, it's been a long, long struggle to develop a change of habit. And I've told you many, many times how much Pam has helped me with that new habit for myself. But it is so very important that we learn to obey the commands that God has given us, as hard as they are, because the blessing is going to be tremendous. So I saw on Facebook last night. So Katie says, if we're harboring resentment, we have an ego issue. We need to come to a level of being grateful, and then because Christ is within us. Absolutely. Um, so there's a Facebook group that I'm in that was asking if there's any ladies Bible studies in town, and I looked at the responses. I reached out to one that had actually started 1 or 2 weeks ago, and probably 2 weeks ago. But anyhow, I contacted them, and they allowed me to join today. And when I was praying about this last night, thinking about going today, do I really want to go? I've struggled with Bible studies before. And I said, Lord, I'm not going just for the Bible study. And I said, I'm sorry, but I know that I spend time in the Word and develop my walk with God actually better with individual study. I said, I am going because I need a friend. Is it possible? I'm asking you to give me a friend in my group, somebody who is looking for a friend and will want me to become their friend. And I went to sleep on that. And so I go to this Bible study this morning. They put me in a group of older ladies, probably 50 and up. Kind of looked like maybe 50 was one of the younger ones. And they see that I'm new. I mentioned that I'm new here. This one lady, not too far from me, pops, she opens her mouth. She says, well, I'm new here too. Can we be friends? And she told me where she lived, and I just smacked my head. It's only 1.5 miles from me, but it's on the same side of town that I'm on. And so we exchanged phone numbers and addresses and sat together. And somebody else who started, apparently they had this Bible study online last year through Zoom, which this computer won't do. So anyhow, there were two ladies who are new that have reached out. So I am just looking at what have I done that life is different now, and I am seeing all these little. I asked the Lord to please help me see the things that He's doing for me. Now, I don't know if all of a sudden God's doing things for me that He didn't do before, or I'm just suddenly noticing them instead of taking them for granted. But it is increasing. Here I have made the choice to give thanks in everything. And suddenly there are some things turning. And so I just want to encourage you. Being obedient to God at some of these hard times in life is so hard. But if you can learn from my mistakes and realize that what God says we ought to do is what we ought to do, because if He commands us, we have to figure out a way to do it. The difference it's going to make in our lives is shocking. Okay, back to news. Did anybody else hear Pelosi say we have to follow Obama's recommendations? I'm not really sure what that all had to do with. It might have had, I'm not really sure. But that statement, I heard it just catching something in passing that somebody was talking about. Didn't catch the context or anything, but I thought, wow. if that's a current comment, then just leaves you wondering what's going on. And apparently there is a jet that has been able to leave Afghanistan. It came to Dubai and then was not allowed to come on to the U.S. I don't even know where that is, Lucy, but I will certainly look it up. Where was I? This plane. So they got to Dubai and they were not allowed to come onto the States. Anyhow, they have been transferring these folks from one plane to another, and they now have permission. They were going to come to JFK. They've now been told to go to Dulles outside of DC. And, my first thought was, man, pray that they're not going to land and be arrested for coming to the States. Good grief. I don't know. Glenn Beck apparently has raised $30 million to help get some people out of Afghanistan, Americans out. There were 100 people on this plane, and apparently only 21 of them are American. Ken Copeland apparently has not just donated one jet, but two to help with evacuation, and also gave $15 million toward it. I'm sure, Mr. Mustard, that you're right on that. It's or some of the other women that were behind him as well. My back to what I was saying about God's blessing. I'm kind of going out of order. This is where I get scattered and I don't stay in the order of things I've written down. But even that's scattered because that's just the way I am. My philosophy of life was hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. But I was thinking about an hour ago when I wrote this down that how much I appreciate being at a new stage in life where I can see God's blessing. But when I was so focused on preparing for the worst and only hoping for the best, how much of God's blessing did I block through the years with that attitude? Now, preparation is important, but I was more focused on the prepping for the worst than I was on the hoping for the best or expecting that God would do things for me. And it just reminds me so often how Larry just felt so incredibly unworthy. And I think we need to, none of us are worthy of anything from the Lord. We're not, because we're sinners. But at some point, we've got to get over beating ourselves up and embrace the fact that God loves us and wants to pour out his blessing, because he says, if you choose life, I will pour out a blessing on you. So, that's cute, April. So, it was interesting something. I was listening to Kat Kerr just a little bit ago, and she made a comment that, it wasn't just my comment about choosing life, but she says we need to choose righteousness. And we need to repent when we sin. Otherwise, you're going to be forever trapped in pain and death forever. Like Revelation 21:8 talks about who's going to end up in the lake of fire forever. And Satan wants to destroy and torment. And so the most wicked people who end up in hell that we are just going to, Satan's not going to, they're not earning any power position or any points with the devil for following the devil. Their life is just because they gave themselves over. She was saying that they will be even more troubled. I found somebody had told me in 2015, I'm going to answer your question, Mr. Mustard, and then we're going to get to scripture. In 2015, somebody told me, whatever you do, never listen to Alex Jones, but wouldn't tell me why. And so the last week in May of 2016, I got curious. I'd been pondering it all year. Why'd this person tell me not to listen to Alex Jones? So I found Alex Jones on YouTube. I tuned in. And that was the last day Larry was on. No, it wasn't the last day he was on, but Larry was on with him announcing to his audience that starting June 1st of 2016, he was going to have his own radio show, an internet radio show. That's cool, Pam. He was going to have his own radio show. He gave the call letters on, or it was an internet radio, and so he told us how to find it. So June 1st, he told us what time. I was on, and I never missed a single day until he, ever. I never ever missed a single day. So the person he'd been working with for a year and a half turned on him very badly. He got somebody new to work with him, and she turned on him very badly. So by November of 2016, I was helping. In July, beginning of July 2016, I called him because he gave us his phone number. He was wanting to do some fundraising. Somebody had offered to do something as a fundraiser, and so I called to offer to make him a quilt, be a patriotic red, white, and blue quilt. I had one that I'd already started, and I offered to finish it, and we could raffle it off. And he very sheepishly said that he was always cold when he went into the hospital, and would I mind making it for him? And so that's what I did. In September, I can't remember if I called him more than that one time or not. But in September, we were talking, and he told me in a very strong voice, "Mary Ellen, your pride is ugly." He spat that word out vehemently. And I said, "Larry, I realize there's a problem. Please tell me what to do and I'll do it." So he did, and I did. And so when this other lady bowed out in November, then I started helping with fundraising for him. And when he started his own program, this channel, Larry Nichols Official Channels, what he was doing was there was somebody who was recording it, and then she would edit and put it up. And that wasn't working real well for fundraising because it didn't go up till evening, and by then he was really hurting and would have needed, money for meds. And so we realized that we could start going live. So in 2019, we started going live with me as co-host because he didn't know how to do it, and so that I would get the thing set up, and then he'd call in. And so I just pulled his phone up to the speaker. He never wanted to be on air because he was vain enough that he didn't. It wasn't just a matter of vanity that he didn't want people to see what he looked like, but he didn't want the enemy to realize how sick he was. He didn't want Trump's team to realize how sick he was, because he didn't want the politicians he was working with to see him and realize how sick he was. And so he didn't want to be on air. It really was more self-protection and making sure that he was able to continue working. When I saw him Friday afternoon, September 25th, which was last year, the last day he was on the show with us, I went over to take some cash to him, and he was all crunched down with the phone, very, very quietly talking to somebody. I figured he was working, because if he was just talking to anybody, he wouldn't have been all scrunched up, just very privately, in a very private conversation. So that's how that happened. And so when he was in the hospital and couldn't be on air, then I continued doing the program. And so people got used to my being here, and that's how things just kept going from them. And after he died and I announced his death, I asked the group, "Do you want me to start my own channel with what I was doing? Do you want me to continue? Do we stay on Larry's channel?" And several people asked me to stay here on his channel in his honor, because the last thing he said to us was he didn't know what was going to come. He was very concerned, and we were at a point where he thought the only thing left to do what was to seek God's face. And so that's why I've continued. Did I shoot the bow? Oh, yes. I actually went over to his house one day, one afternoon, a couple weeks before he died. And we went out in his backyard and he wanted to make sure that he wanted to check my form in shooting the bow. So, yes, we did. I got to shoot it once, and he shot it once. And that pretty much was the end of him. I think it might have even been the Thursday before he died. But he mentioned that, no, it wasn't. It was a couple of weeks before he died. But he mentioned that something had happened when he shot the bow, that he could feel something had pulled or something internally, and he was concerned. So he only lived a couple weeks after that. So the title of today, I titled it "Predicted War: Who's Involved and Where Will It Happen?" And there are two wars that are predicted in the Bible that we still have not seen come to pass. One is Ezekiel 38 and 39. But listen to this, Ezekiel 38, and then you reverse the numbers 38 and you end up with Psalm 83, which I think is ironic. So I'm going to read Psalm 83 because I read Obadiah yesterday, and I'm sorry that we couldn't do both Obadiah, which is only one chapter, 21 verses, and Psalm 83, which is one chapter, 18 verses. I'm sorry we couldn't do them back to back, but if you want to go hear more about Obadiah, you can go listen to yesterday. So there's a lot of parallel between what Obadiah says as a prophet and what Psalm 83 says. Psalm 83 is actually a song that was written by Asa, who led I'll call it the choir. That's the term we go to by. But the music leaders, the worship leaders. So I'm going to stay, Lucy, because I was gonna stay on for a year, hoping that I didn't crash his channel by the truth that I was telling. Because YouTube's going to take down videos if you talk about certain subjects that we all know that you're not allowed to talk about. But I would have to have 1,000 subscribers of my own before I could go live. And when we have anywhere from 6 to 30 people listening live, that's just, and even if we get up to, a couple hundred people watching later, that's not going to get me to 1,000 subscribers on my own. So I'm staying here until YouTube crashes this channel. And I'm trying to be careful about what I talk about or don't talk about. So anyhow, Psalm 83 starts with, "O God, do not keep silent. Be not quiet, O God, be not still." So we're to be still before the Lord. It says that many, many times. But here he's praying and asking, he's crying out to God, "Don't you be still. See how your enemies are astir." So who are Israel's enemies? These are God's people. This is, well, Jerusalem is the city of God and will be forever. We know that there are people in Israel who are in leadership there who are not truly Jews, and so therefore not God's people. There are a lot of Luciferian worshiping people in that country, which is why you see so many people being forced into doing something that is leading to their death. That's what Satan does. Satan destroys everything. So the psalmist here is saying, "See how your enemies are astir and your foes are rearing their heads." We know the agreements that are being signed and made. Even Saudi Arabia and Iran are putting aside their differences and coming together as brothers, and they will all have a common enemy with cunning. And of course, right now, the way we got out of Afghanistan, they're feeling victorious. And so what does that mean? What is that going to do to them? With cunning, they conspire together against your people. And this whole idea of conspiring, of course, is Psalm 2. "Why did the nations rage and the kings conspire together against the Lord and his anointed?" So with cunning, they conspire against your people. They plot against those that you cherish. Come, they say. Now, as far as cherish, that's God's people as well. God's, we are grafted in as children of Abraham, as his chosen people because of our love for Jesus Christ. Come, they say, let's destroy them as a nation, that the name of Israel be remembered no more. There's all this plot. With one mind, boy, we're seeing this being fulfilled right now. With one mind, they plot together. They form an alliance against you. The tents of Edom, which is the descendants of Esau, much of Edom is in Jordan. The tents of Edom and the Ishmaelites, and of course the Muslims are descended from Ishmael. From Moab and the descendants of Hagar, which of course is the Ishmaelites. These are all the surrounding Arab nations that surround Israel. Gebal, Ammon, Amalek, Philistia, which is on the Mediterranean coast, with the people of Tyre, also on the Mediterranean. Even Assyria, and Assyria was Syria plus Iraq. Even Assyria has joined them to lend strength to the descendants of Lot. Do to them as you did to Midian. Now, who came against Midian? Gideon did. That is Judges 6, 7, and 8. Gideon put together an army of 30,000 men to go against the Midianite army of 320,000 men. That's not even, boy, look at that statistic. It's worse than 1 to 10. But God said that's too much. Your army's too big, and made him whittle it down to 300 men. So Gideon, with 300 men, defeated a Midianite army of 320,000. Do to them as you did to Sisera. Now, Sisera was the king who also came against Israel, and he was invited by a woman into a tent to rest. He was tired. He was going home. And, she tricked him and let him come into the tent to sleep. And when he was sound asleep, she took a peg and drove it through his temple and nailed him to the ground. And as you did to Jabin at the river Kishon. Now, I don't remember who Jabin is. I didn't look that one up. But these people never oppressed Israel again. So the psalmist is saying, do to these people, destroy them the way you did these other enemies. Jabin perished at Endor and became like refuse on the ground. Make their nobles like Oreb and Zeb, their princes like Zeba and Zalmunna, who said, I don't remember who they are to give you background either. Let's take possession of the pasture lands of God. Now we know that God had predicted, the Bible had predicted that at some point Israel would be a desert, but at some point it was going to revive again, and you were going to see streams in the desert, and the desert land was becoming rich pasture, and they export so much food out of Israel because of this. So now, just like China wants our farms, these other enemies want Israel's great farmland. Make them like tumbleweed, O God, like chaff before the wind. As fire consumes the forest, or a flame sets mountains ablaze, so pursue them with your tempest and terrify them with your storm. So even though we've got weapons and we've got DARPA and everything, these people can't do this without God's permission. I was talking to a veteran earlier this week, who talked about having been fighting in Syria, or he was there on some kind of mission. I have no idea what it was. Okay, we didn't discuss that. But the interesting thing was, he was talking to a leader. I don't know if it was a general or who he was talking to. Isaiah 17:1 says that Damascus is going to be a ruinous heap. Damascus has never yet been a ruinous heap. And this person that called me, this veteran that called me, was asking this person in authority, it would be so easy to just take out Damascus and destroy it and be done. Why are we not doing that? And the answer he got was prophecy. It's not time yet. Isn't that interesting? So cover their faces with shame so that men will seek your name, O Lord. Here we are. God allows terrible things to happen so that we might seek his face, or seek your name, as it says here. May they ever be ashamed and dismayed. May they perish in disgrace. So who is in disgrace right now? Makes you wonder who's in charge of what just happened in Afghanistan. Let them know that you, whose name is the Lord, that you alone are the most high over all the earth. So all these nations that are mentioned here are the nations that surround Israel. Ezekiel 38 talks about Egypt. It's got different names for Libya and Sudan, but they are also mentioned. And so you've got the Muslim countries of northern Africa, as well as which is to the south and to the west of Israel, and then you've got all the other surrounding nations on the south and east and north of Israel that are all going to conspire together. They are conspiring together, and there are two wars. Because some of the names that are listed in Psalm 83 and Ezekiel 38 are slightly different. Mark Biltz wrote a book called The Psalm 83 War, and he thinks they're two different wars, but he didn't know which one would come first. But, Jesus said that we will not know the day or the hour that he's going to return. Now, one of the things that I heard somebody say once about day and hour is when the feast days come, there is a 2-day period because of different time zones. And so they would celebrate over 2 days because they didn't know exactly the day and hour in each time zone that this feast would start. And he was saying that because Jesus said we'll know the seasons, we can be watching. We can watch the signs of his coming and have an idea, even if we don't know the exact hour. But we should be watching and ready because we're observing what's going on. So that's what I'm kind of doing right now is talking about a little bit of this. Laura, you said, JL. Yeah. That was another one of those that were not in the list, but part of the history that was being spoken of. So that's it for today. May God bless you abundantly. This is Wednesday, so I'll be back tomorrow. Mr. Mustard, Scripture said that in the end times, Israel would become a nation again. No other nation has been destroyed and wiped out and come back to life. And that has happened. And Jesus said that when that happens, and he didn't say when Jerusalem becomes the capital again, which happened in 1967. He says when Israel becomes a nation again. This generation shall not pass away until all be fulfilled. Now, how many years is a generation? There are lots of varieties in what people consider. Some people say 20 years, 40 years, 70 years, 100 years, 120 years. So in 1948, when Israel was declared and recognized by the U.S. and the UN as a nation, anybody who has been born since that time and may have even been alive at that time should be here at the end. But of course, people die, things happen, but the issue is not individuals that we know will be here, but the generation that we live in should be here at the end. Well, people born in 48 are 72 years old now, 73 years old this year. So they're getting up in years. It's said that a man's life, if they live 70 years, We're getting up there now. Whether it's a whole 120, people don't normally live that long in this day and age. So, will we be here? Some of us probably will be. Can't say that for sure because we're not given anything definitive, but we are watching the signs, and that is definitely one that indicates we are, it's at the door. That's why Jesus said, when you see these things happening, look up because your redemption is drawing nigh. So, all right, that's it for today. God bless you, and I'll see you tomorrow afternoon. And, I'm going to be here as long as we've got internet. And I will say there is something happening mid-October where I've been asked to take a veteran down to the hospital in Little Rock. And so when Mr. Mustard, if you can, I'll let you call me if you send me an email, Mary Ellen, the numeral 4, Larry, Mary Ellen for Larry at yahoo.com. That might be interesting. Talk to you tomorrow. Mid-October, I'm going to take somebody to the doctor in Little Rock. So I'm giving you it's mid-October, and the last time this was scheduled, it was canceled and rescheduled. So we'll see what happens. I may also have to go out in the boonies to help with some elder care. And, as long as I said, please, as long as I know, please give me a little bit of heads up so I can let you guys know. But yeah, Christian, send an email to Mary Ellen for Larry at yahoo.com, the numeral 4, not the FOR, but the number itself. And I'll get it to you. I don't want to announce it here. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye.